everybody, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I'm going to bring you guys a video review on what I think is possibly the smallest and lightest prismatic optic on the market. And that optic is the Atibal SAP. So join me today and find out my complete thoughts on this micro prismatic optic from Atibal. And like always, before we get too far into this video review, I do want to let you guys know that we do sell these Atibal products at our website, heartoftexasarmory.com. And just in case you guys weren't aware, we do have coupon codes available for pretty much all the products we sell at our website. So if you're looking for a good deal, looking for a product, don't forget to contact us using the integrated chat system on our website. Once you reach out to us using that chat system, we'll get right back to you with any coupon codes we have for the products you're looking for. So the Atibal SAP is a true prismatic optic, and even though it looks like a red dot because it is so small and compact, it is a prismatic, and I do want to break down some of the key differences, advantages, and disadvantages that a prismatic optic has when compared to a traditional LED red dot. So I don't want to spend too much time breaking down all of the differences between an LED optic and a prismatic optic, but I will cover some of the highlights here. So with an LED optic, you do have an LED emitter that projects the reticle off of a front lens that's typically angled and reflects that back to your eye. And that is a very simple design that does allow for LED optics to be very small and very lightweight. But one negative with them is that if you do have an astigmatism, you're probably going to see the reticle with some type of artifacts on it. So a lot of folks will see the dot on a red dot as a starburst or sometimes as a comet, and that's just a result of their astigmatism. Now that's not the end of the world, because even if you have an astigmatism, typically you're still able to use LED red dots very effectively. But on the flip side, if you do have a really bad astigmatism, or if you're just bothered by not having a perfectly crisp reticle, that's where a prismatic optic is going to come into play. So prismatic optics do have a laser etched reticle, so you're not going to have a reticle being reflected back into your eye, and that allows you to use a prismatic optic very effectively even with an astigmatism, and typically your reticle is going to be still very crisp even with a bad astigmatism. Another key difference with prism optics is that they typically come with a diopter adjustment like you see here on this Atibal SAP. So a diopter adjustment allows you to really fine-tune that image for your eye, that way you can get the best image quality possible. And the last key difference I'll mention between an LED optic and a prism optic is that LED optics always have to have some type of power source to run, and that's typically done by either a battery, a solar cell, or a combination of the two. But with a prismatic optic having a laser etched reticle, that reticle will always be there. This Atibal SAP does have battery powered illumination, but even if the batteries do end up dying on you, you're still able to use this optic because of that laser etched reticle. It's always going to be there. Specifications. Taking a look at the specs of the Atibal SAP, the thing that really jumps out when you look at these specs is how small this optic actually is. So typically prismatic optics are a bit bulky and heavy, particularly when you compare them against an LED red dot, something like an Aimpoint T1. But this Atibal SAP is extremely compact. We're looking at a front to back length of only 2.2 inches, and it really is the size of a micro red dot. So the eye relief is pretty solid on this SAP. Atibal lists these specs at 4 to 6 inches of eye relief, and I tend to agree with them. And that type of eye relief is perfect for weapons similar to an AR-15. That eye relief allows you to mount this optic in the proper place on an AR-15 upper receiver. So I would also like to point out how lightweight this optic is. It's listed at 5.8 ounces, and that's pretty impressive for a prismatic optic. And that does put this optic right in line with a lot of other popular LED optics on the market. So the weight's going to be comparable to, say, something like a Romeo 5 from Sig Sauer, or even an Aimpoint T1 or T2. The Atibal SAP is also fog-proof, waterproof, and shockproof, which is a nice touch. The optic does allow for illumination of the reticle, and we do have 8 brightness settings here, which is nice. The actual reticle is a circle dot, which I always am a big fan of, so we do have a 60 MOA circle and a 3 MOA dot in the center. The last thing I'll mention here is that the Atibal SAP, like all their products, does come with a lifetime warranty, and that's always a bonus. Materials and construction. Construction of the Atibal SAP is pretty solid. We do have an optic that is constructed completely out of aircraft grade aluminum, and it does feature a black anodized finish here. And that finish is done pretty well. It is pretty uniform, as you can see here. It's going to be on par with most other optics in this price point. The mount on this optic is also solid. You can see that it is constructed also of aluminum. And we do have a removable spacer, so how it's set up right now is in absolute co-witness height, but you can remove that spacer to drop it down for a low mount if you need to. So we don't get a quick detach mount with this optic, but the simple torque style setup here works just fine. The optic does have a side mounted battery compartment here, and that compartment is held in place by these 2 torque screws. So whenever you do want to replace your battery, it's a simple procedure. And the last thing I'll mention here in regards to construction is how well the windage and elevation turrets here are protected by these wings and chunks of aluminum. So with that much protection on those turrets, you're going to be hard pressed to damage the turrets, and that's always a good thing. Controls and operation. So with the SAP being a prismatic optic, that etched reticle is always going to be there, but this unit does also feature battery-powered illumination. To turn the illumination on is very simple. All you need to do is press the up arrow. Once you have the unit on, as you can see here, you're able to cycle up or down between 8 intensity settings. And as you hopefully can see, the optic does get fairly bright, and it is what I would consider daylight bright, meaning that you're able to use the optic even in bright sunlight. Keep in mind though that the optic does not get as bright as most modern LED optics, but is close. And to power off the unit manually is very simple. You just hold down the down button here for 3 seconds and the unit will power off. The windage and elevation turret caps do feature the flathead design here. You can see it is machined into the caps, and that does allow you to adjust the windage and elevation without any tools. The adjustments on both turrets are in 1 MOA increments, so basically you will move 1 inch at 100 yards each time you click. The actual click adjustments are fairly audible, and each adjustment is defined, but I will mention they are a bit spongy. Being a prism optic, we do have a diopter adjustment here at the ocular lens, and Atibal did machine in some nice knurlings so you have excellent grip on that diopter adjustment. The rotation of the diopter is very smooth, and you can see there's quite a bit of adjustment, but that actually turns out to be a negative, but we'll talk about that more when we get to the actual negatives of this optic. Positives and negatives. So the first positive is the most obvious, and it's just how impressively small this optic actually is for a prismatic. It definitely is the smallest prismatic optic on the market that I'm aware of, and the only other competitors that I know of would be the Bushnell Little P, which was discontinued, and then also the new Primary Arms Micro Prism. So talking with some of the guys at Atibal, my understanding is that this optic has been in development for around 2 years, and what I'll mention is that it is extremely difficult to manufacture a prismatic optic in this size, so I do have to give major props to Atibal on coming out with this product, bringing a prismatic optic that is truly the same size as some of the smallest micro LED optics on the market. Another positive, at least for me, is that this optic does feature a circle dot. So I use a lot of optics from 6 Hour and Holosun, so I am quite used to the circle dot setup. So again, for me personally, that was a positive that this particular unit did have a circle dot. The illumination on this unit is also a positive in my opinion. Most prismatic optics do suffer on how bright they can actually get, so a lot of them just aren't daytime bright, but this unit here does get bright enough to use even in bright sunlight. Battery life is also impressive with this unit. Atibal lists the specs at 30,000 battery life hours, and if that number is in fact true, that is very impressive, and again it does put that in line with a lot of other LED optics on the market in regards to battery life. And the last positive I'll mention here on this optic is, just like all Atibal products, it does come with a lifetime warranty. So it's always a bonus when companies actually stand behind their products, and another cool thing about Atibal is they have excellent customer service. So it's always nice to have the peace of mind knowing that if something did happen to your optic, Atibal's got your back and they'll definitely take care of you. So moving on to the negatives, there are quite a few things that I'll mention here. None of them really make or break the optic in my opinion, but I do want to mention them. So first off, the most obvious thing here is the aesthetics of this optic. So in my opinion, the Atibal SAP is just not a very nice looking design. When you compare it against other micro-prismatic optics on the market, the design aesthetics just look strange. And these looks are somewhat a result of the design of this optic, because we do have a prismatic optic that is so small. So what I mean by that is, if you take a look at this optic when you have it mounted on a weapon, it actually looks like it's backwards. Because of how compact this design is, the windage and elevation turrets are actually mounted toward the front here of the optic near the objective lens. And that's why when you have this optic mounted on your weapon, it will appear backwards. So no matter which way you slice it, it's just not a very aesthetically pleasing design. Another negative that I'll mention is that the diopter adjustment, in my opinion, is a bit too coarse. And what I mean by that is instead of actually fine-tuning the image quality for your eye, the diopter actually magnifies the image when you move it in and out. So hopefully you can see as I move this diopter that the target is actually moving in and out. And that's a bit unfortunate because on a micro dot like this, you want to be able to use it easily with both eyes open. And it can be disorienting if your target is actually closer or farther away than what your off eye is seeing. So what I tend to do with this optic is actually match the target size to what I'm seeing with my off eye. That way when I do use this optic with both eyes open, it doesn't give me any issues. But the negative is that this diopter doesn't actually work like a diopter should. And in my case, I'm not able to get the best image quality possible because instead of adjusting the diopter to the best image quality, I'm adjusting that diopter to match the target size to my off eye. And another negative that I'll mention about the actual reticle is that, at least to my eye, the reticle appears to be too coarse. So I would have preferred that the circle on the circle dot would have been just a little bit finer, and then also the reticle itself is just not as clear as it could be. Final conclusions. But at the end of the day, I still recommend this Atibal SAP Micro Prism. And while for me personally, it wouldn't be my first choice for a compact optic, as I do tend to prefer LED optics, but I do certainly understand the niche that this optic does fill in the market. So if you do take away the negative aesthetics of this optic, you are left with a solid choice. And if you are someone that's looking for a very compact optic, but you struggle with an LED optic because of your astigmatism, that's where this Atibal SAP comes into play. And there really is only a few options out there currently on the market that would compare to this. And this optic here is definitely the smallest of the bunch. So if you are in the market for a micro prismatic optic that's well built, backed by a good company, and comes with a lifetime warranty, you definitely should consider the Atibal SAP. Guys, if you have any questions or comments on this product, definitely leave them down below and I'll get back to you. You guys take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.